All right, hey guys, it's Luke. So kind of getting back in the saddle here after some holiday vacation. I wanted to share with you today just some thoughts, uh, kind of get past that, just that traditional, week of training thread that we're doing on the forums. I will definitely add this in there, but I think this might be a better way to kind of get some things started, right? My I want to provide some observations and some potential solutions to some things I saw. So I saw a lot of people, athletes of mine, people on Team LHR, people in Facebook groups, all that stuff. The holidays are chaotic, right? There's travel. We had our own holiday mishap. Um, but it's a lot of travel. It's a lot of stress. It can be a lot of stress, right? Like I love the holidays, but I don't like the stress, right? But in any case, a lot of travel, chaotic schedules, some missed runs, right? Like people were pretty good about just moving things around, but things were missed. Some things were missed, right? Or things were scaled back, and it wasn't exactly as laid out. And but that's okay, right? I think that's fine. As a lot of people a lot of people are just starting their buildups anyway. I have a few people who are kind of in the middle of hard training, but they were fine. They made it through okay. But I want to just kind of hit on some things, right? Because most of the people that I observed missed something, but they didn't miss a lot, right? It was either rearranged, scaled back, or they missed a day or two due to travel. And that's not the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination. Most of our problems are going to come from, I saw a lot of people like, oh man, I overindulged. I don't feel very good, bloated. My legs are heavy, all this stuff, right? And so I think a lot of people are in that situation, but it's not as bad as we might think it's being. I think some people are already starting to like kind of question goals in the spring and all this stuff. And I don't think we need to quite be there yet. But so I just want to offer some advice to all of you. And I think the first thing that I would say is actually I have it fourth, but I should move it to first is that don't try to make up for lost time, right? Like that usually causes more harm than good. It usually is what leads people into getting injured, right? You're fine for a week or two, and then you get hurt, right? And that's even worse than the situation you're in now, because at least now you still have 12, 14, 16 weeks to get to where you want. But if you take the next few weeks and ramp it up to try to make up for stuff you missed the last few weeks, now all of a sudden you're getting into the point where you're like 8, 10 weeks out and you're hurt, right? Right at a time where you really need to be consistent in getting to that race specific work. Now you've got a more of a setback than what you had, 6 weeks before that, right? And so it usually doesn't end up well. Now that's like I'm talking about like adding volumes to workouts, adding more to long runs, making things harder. I saw somebody say, well, I just added like a mile to my easy days over the course of the week. For the most part, that's fine, but I would be careful because you don't want to be doing something where you're like 20 miles a week, 1 week, and then you're jumping up to 40 plus miles the next week or two, right? That's just too much for the body to really kind of absorb. If it's like within a few miles a week, like less than 5 miles a week, it's probably fine. It's probably your body really probably just absorb it. You won't even really notice the difference, right? But I wouldn't change workouts. If you want to add a little bit to easy runs just to kind of boost that volume up, that's probably the safest thing to do. But even then, I would keep that in check. I wouldn't go more than like 4 or 5 miles a week, right? Um, so that would be that first thing is don't worry about making up for missed time because ultimately it's probably going to create a bigger setback at a worse time, right? And we don't want to do that. As far as right now, what I would say is get back to your regular running. Just get back on schedule, right? If you're on 5 days a week, get back to those 5 days a week. If you get to run 6 days a week, get back to those 6 days a week. Whatever the case is, get back on your normal schedule. Um, Now, if you have to scale, like it- going back to that thing, try not to make up for lost time. If if you did, like say you only managed to get like 20 miles a week in, but you're supposed to be at 40 miles a week, and you're running 5 to 6 days a week, get back to that 5, 6 days a week. Just scale those runs back, right? I'd rather see you get the number up first and then get the volume back to where you want it to be. So if I would rather see you get to the number of days you're running per week. And honestly, you're probably going to be able to absorb a bigger jump because you're spreading it out more across the week, right? You're running less at one time, right? If you scale that, if you're running 6 to 8 miles on your easy runs and you scale that back to 4 to 5 for a week, it's more than what you did the week before, but it's not as much as you were going to do. And if you only did that in like 3 or 4 days and then you spread it over 5 to 6 days a week, you're going to be more likely to be able to absorb that because you're not adding like one single stress at one time, right? You're spreading that stress out over several days, right? So just keep that in mind. The second thing I have, or the third thing I have, is you'll bounce back quick even if you feel like crap, right? Because like I said, most of you didn't miss a ton of time all at once. You missed things here and there spread out. And that's a lot easier to bounce back from. You still might not feel the greatest. I still have a lot of people who are like, my legs are heavy. I'm probably a few pounds over. I've overindulged a little bit. And you'll feel that, right? So don't stress about that. I promise in a couple of weeks, you might not feel 100% back to where you were, but you'll feel much, much better than where you were. So just give it time. Don't stress out about that. The last thing I have is don't force the paces, and this goes back to that, right? Like you're not going to feel very good. You potentially won't feel very good. You might feel great, but if you don't feel very good, don't force the paces, right? Just let the paces come back, especially if you added a couple pounds. Like I just had a conversation, not in our community, we just had a conversation with a gentleman who, he was talking about his marathon goals and how, he's actually running way too fast now, but I dove in a little bit more and asked some questions, come to find out that he lost 20 pounds, right? And so to me, that makes sense, right? Because if you think about that, the general equation is like 2.2 seconds per pound per mile, right? And so if you added on, Christmas cookie weight, then, added like 3, 4 pounds on, that's 10 seconds a mile that you're losing right there, right? So so you could be like, if you're just not there, don't force the paces because now that you're back in being consistent, you're back wrapping up the training, that will come off, right? And so don't worry too much about that. But the big factor with that is that you are going to have to get back on track. Like you're going to have to clean up your eating. You're going to have to get back to, if you're hungry, drinking a glass of water first or whatever, but you're going to have to clean that up. You can't just continue on that path you went over the 2 weeks. And I don't think most people do. Like, I think you get to that point, you're like, I kind of done. I don't feel very good. I'm not going to keep doing that. Right. And it's just, that stuff's gone. Like, because to me, Christmas is the worst because it's more sweet oriented, right? Like Thanksgiving, yeah, you practice gluttony for a day and then it's over, right? But Christmas, it's like, man, you got a few weeks there where it's like Christmas cookies, lots of sweets, lots of meals, parties. If you're a drinker, if you're a partier, if you have like company parties and stuff and you have a few drinks and you get all those foo-foo drinks and all whatever, like there's a lot of extra calories all the time, it seems like. So, but you get to that in that 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, you hit the first of the year, people are usually a little more motivated, and, but you have to clean it up, right? So that leads me to the second part of what I wanted to talk about a little bit and just have some things to think about. If you are 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds, a little extra than you wanted to be, and now you're at a point where you really kind of have to start ramping up the training, you have to be careful, right? Because losing weight is not what we should be trying to accomplish when we're training hard, right? It might be a slight byproduct of training hard, just as we've maybe cleaned up our diet or we're just excessively burning more calories than we're used to, whatever. But it shouldn't be a goal of ours when we're training, right? So we have to be very, very careful with this, right? So my advice, I have 5 points here. I want you to think about. One, still fuel for your workouts, right? If you got a long run coming up, still practice your fueling. Practice what you're going to take for the marathon and start increasing those rates that you're taking it at, because you're going to use those calories right away. Those calories are not going to be stored. They're not going to be sitting in your body and just being converted to fat because they're not being used. Those are getting burnt right away. So you're providing the fuel you need for the workout. And as we've seen recently with studies, like that fueling window, pre, during, and post, and especially when you get into post, not only is that going to help you recover from that workout, but it's going to make the next workout better too, right? So fuel those workouts. I think that's crucial, right? Now, if you restrict during the rest of the day, that's one thing. I don't know if I would necessarily restrict on a workout day. You almost kind of go into that carb cycling thing where like workout days, I'm gonna fuel, I'm gonna make sure I'm taken care of. But on my easy days or my off days, yes, I'm going to restrict what I'm taking in. And in that case, what I want to do is I want to focus on quality protein intake, right? Because if we're going to restrict calories, what happens to our bodies, right? If we do that severe enough and for long enough, you're going to slow your metabolism down. So we don't want to slow our metabolism down. We want to keep that high. That's going to help us lose weight, right? If we're revving a high engine or high revving an engine, it's going to burn more fuel, right? And so we can, if we keep that high, we want to keep that high because we're going to expend more calories with less effort, right? Um, so focus on that protein. It's going to preserve the muscle mass. That's huge, right? What we want to lose is fat weight, right? And so if we do that, we're preserving our muscle weight. Our body's not gonna kind of not cannibalize on itself, and we're going to keep that high. We're going to keep that muscle mass intact, which is going to make when we kind of go back to that regular diet much more attainable. We're not, and it helps with satiety too. Like if a protein takes a while to digest, you feel full for longer. So there's a lot of good things with that. So I would say 20 to 40 grams, 4 to 5 times over the course of the day. If you can do that and you restrict, don't restrict good carbohydrate. Like you eat fruits and vegetables, that's one thing. But if you're just eating a lot of junk, restrict that out, cut that out of your diet, right? Scale that back. Or in general, you can scale your calories back and go more into a high protein, lower carb, lower fat diet. And you do that for a couple weeks, see what happens, right? But if you can preserve that metabolism, preserve the muscle mass, you're going to feel so much better, right? And what you're burning will be what you want it to be burnt, right? The other thing is if you don't do strength training, I don't know if I would necessarily start with heavy lifting, but do our core routines, make sure you do the dynamic warm-ups, do your stride, something that's going to force you into some sort of resistance type training. And that also will help with burning the calories that you want to burn. With that said, if you're scaling back on just taking in food in general, make sure on top of the protein, you're taking a good quality multivitamin, right? Because if you don't eat the fruits and vegetables and stuff that provide those vitamins and minerals, you need to replace them at some point, right? So we want to stay as healthy as we possibly can and just scale back on some of the stuff that we don't want in right now, but still keep all the other stuff that we want. So I would say focus on taking a quality multivitamin, the protein intake, 20 to 40 grams, 4 to 5 times a day. Restrict the carbs and fats outside of your workout window. So it all comes back to that fuel for the workouts, pre, during, post. You can still get what you need from a fitness standpoint and not what you want to scale back on from losing a few pounds standpoint. And this is just a few pounds. We're not trying to lose 10, 20 pounds here. Like that's not what we're discussing. We're just trying to get back to where we were pre-holidays, right? So, and then if you're still in that kind of that build-up phase, like I think we're like 15, 16 weeks out from a lot of the spring marathons, you still are still doing fairly light workouts. Just focus on getting that volume in. Keep the intensity low so you're focusing on that fat burning, right? We're not if you're running a more of a moderate pace, getting close to marathon pace and faster, then you're focusing more and more on carbs, right? We're not necessarily looking to burn more of the carbs because whatever weight we added on is not carbohydrate at this point. It is fat weight, right? So keeping that intensity low, burning as much fat as we possibly can. And I think if you can do those things start out with a week, see where you're at, and then 2 weeks, see where, I feel like a safe weight loss would be a pound, maybe 2 pounds a week. So 2 weeks would put you right around 4 pounds, which hopefully is about where the max where most people are at, right? Hopefully it's more in that 1 to 3 pound range. If you can do that, then we can kind of make this short-term sacrifice and restrict some things at the right times, get back as soon as we possibly can without sacrificing our overall health and our overall ability to train at a high level, right? So, all right. So that's all I have for you today. Think about that is what your situations are. Feel free to comment in the forum where I'm going to be posting this, and we'll keep the discussion rolling. So, all right, guys, I will talk to you later. See ya.